1989 Donruss. In this pack, we're looking for Ken Griffey Jr., Gary Sheffield, rated rookies, Nolan Ryan, Bo Jackson, Rickey Henderson, a lot of the standards. So let's dive right in and see what we can find. Pack opens up neatly. See right there, George Brett right to begin with. And puzzle. Kevin Gross, Nick Gasaski, Chris Brown, Bob Walk, terrible name for a pitcher, Joe Bader, Rick Sutcliffe, it's a good one, Bob Ojeda, Mickey Brantley, Tony Fernandez, solid veteran, Kent Urbeck, another solid veteran, Carlton Fisk, Diamond Kings. In my opinion, these cards are just really cool for that era. Really kind of pushed the graphics that were available and really pushed the printing capabilities back then. Jimmy Key, Kirby Puckett, one of my favorites to watch as a kid. So much fun, brought so much enthusiasm to the game. Kirby Puckett and George Brett, as we saw in the beginning. Okay, let's keep going on our dive into 1989 Donruss baseball. Pop this bad boy open, make it a little easier for us to access. Give it the good old baseball shop look for when you were a kid. In my opinion, you know, honestly, this 1989 Donruss baseball set is pretty cool. Again, like I said earlier, pushes the graphics, pushes the printing capabilities back then. This also personally, for me, was the first set that I ever put together on my own. The first set that I ever spent a bunch of my own money buying cards and completing the set. And I still have that set, actually. So really has some special meaning to me. But let's dive right in. Ron Darling, Andre Dawson, Rick Mailer, Brett Butler. As a Giants fan, he was one of my faves. Doug Drabeck, Benito Santiago, another one of my faves, even though I was not a Padres fan. Cal Daniels, Mike Schmidt, Lee Hatcher, Vince Coleman, Ozzie Guillen, Bob Boone, Mike Stanley, Ken Griffey Jr. There's that rated rookie that we were so looking for. Yes. Not going to lie, as an 11-year-old, I would be running around the block screaming right now. Even as a late 40s, I'm still pretty excited about this card. Ken Griffey Jr. was my all-time favorite behind Rickey Henderson. It was 1A, 1 and 1A, Rickey Henderson, Ken Griffey Jr. So we're going to set this one aside for now. And Bryn Smith. All right, let's dive into the next pack. Puzzle piece, standard, get past it. Kelly Gruber, decent veteran. Bert Blyleven, Juan Castillo, Diamond Kings, Bobby Bonilla, checklist. Never quite got these. You know, who's going to mark these up? But I guess, you know, if you want to keep track, it helps. Willie McGee, fun to watch. Jamie Moyer, Bobby Bonilla, Ozzie Virgil, Rob Murphy, David Palmer, Tony Gwynn, Bob Nepper, Keith Hernandez, and a Cameron Drew rated rookie. I'd be curious to go back and look at some of these rated rookies. You know, what did they wind up doing with their lives? Cameron Drew, I don't think, had a very significant career in the major leagues as far as I can remember, but I could be wrong. You know, I'm getting old, forget things. My wife would attest to the same. Lloyd McClendon, Brian Harper, Rick Leach, Mike Schooler, Alex Sanchez, another guy. I think he played for a little while, but not a notable career as far as I can recall. Kevin Blankenship, Keith Miller, Paul Mirabella, Jody Davis, Gary Reedus, Carmelo Martinez, Darryl Perry, MVP, Brian Meyer, checklist again, and Tony Armas, a solid veteran. It's fun to go back through and kind of look at some of these names. You know, can I do math? This is 36 years later. Puzzle piece, standard. Storm Davis. I mean, that's a cool name. If you're going to be a pitcher, that's a cool name. George Brett, Oral, Don Candelaria, Mike Greenwell, Alan Trammell, Ted Higuera, Pete Stanishek, Kevin Seitzer, Diamond King, again another checklist, Mike Young, Mike Smithson, Miguel Garcia, Derek Lilliquist, and Jay Howell. And make some room for myself in this thing. Let's see, this one they hit with all the extra glue. The upcharge for glue on that one. Standard puzzle. Tom Glavine, Jose Rijo, solid career. Phil Bradley, Tom Flannery, Larry Anderson, Lynn Dykstra, ton of fun to watch. Felix Jose, growing up in the Bay Area, a lot of excitement about this guy. Didn't necessarily pan out. Another one of those rated rookies. Curtis Wilkerson, Cal Ripken MVP, John Dobson, Luis Polonia, Brad Wellman, Carmen Castillo, Danny Heat, and Ken Phelps. Another guy who had a really long career, made an impact on multiple teams. Solid veteran. Okay, keep diving in here. Standard puzzle. Charlie Huff, again, one of those guys, veteran, long career, made a difference on a lot of teams. Joe Carter, MVP, Tim Wallach, Dave Parker, another guy I loved watching growing up. Dave Parker was one of those guys that could just mash. He could just hit a ball forever. Brett Saberhagen, Andy Allenson, Kirk Gibson, Jim Rice, Mike Pagliarulo, Matt Noakes, Oral Hershiser, Mike Morgan, Frank Viola Diamond King, Jeff Reardon, and George Bell. It's fun going back through and seeing some of these names, some of these veterans that played for so long that made a difference, and you kind of forget about them because they're not in the Hall of Fame, but they still had a significant impact on the game, on the history of the game. Some of them won some rings. Some of them had defining moments, really made a difference with the talent and the skills that they were given. And just fun to go back and kind of recall those names. Chris Sabo, one of those guys, didn't quite pan out the way I think people expected his career, but still a good player. Juan Nieves, Craig Worthington, Fred Lynn, Alejandro Pena, Luis Aguayo, Rich Yett, Gene Nelson, Governor Jerry Brown, Luis Aquino, Pete Harnish, another one of those rookies, Chad Kruger, Tracy Jones, Glenn Hubbard, and Luis de los Santos. Let's keep this party rolling. Just dive in. Oh, this pack looks like it's been through some things in the last 35 years. Looking a little beat up. Todd Benziger, Luis Salazar, Mike Greenwell, Mickey Tettleton. If you're in my generation, Mickey Tettleton, that was the stance you were doing in the backyard. When you wanted to have a little bit of fun playing wiffle ball or backyard baseball, that was the stance. So fun to see that name again. Steve Bedrosian, Dan Gladden, Tom Henke, Jim Presley, Greg Maddox, Kelly Downs, Jim Gott, Paul Austenmacher, Jeff Treadway, Marvell Wynn, and Tom Pagnozzi. Another one of those names you kind of forget about who had a little bit of an impact for a while. Okay, just keeping this party rolling. Alex Madrid, Gerald Clark, Bill Schrader, Lil Warren Spawn, Hall of Fame, Diamond King, callback, Greg Olson, rated rookie, solid veteran, Scott May, Alvin Davis, Nelson Liriano, Jerry Reed, Tim Laudner, Rod Nichols, Oral Hershiser, Hippolito Pena, Spike Owen, and Todd Froworth. Let's see. Still looking again for one of those Sheffields or a Nolan Ryan or even a Rickey Henderson, my favorite. Greg Harris, Ken Caminiti, Ken Hill, Brian Harvey, Blackjack McDowell, Ray Hayward, Tom Gordon, rated rookie again, had a solid career. Johnny Paredes, Todd Burns, Jose De Jesus, Tim Leary, Hensley Bam Bam Mullins, Wes Gardner, Juan Castillo, and Eric King. Hensley Bam Bam Mullins is probably one of the coolest nicknames of our generation. There's a lot of them, of course. You get Chris Berman was a huge influence on that, so we grew up with nicknames becoming common monikers for players. So add a little fun to the game. Steve Balboni, Shawan Dunstan, Jose Uribe, Brian Fisher, Tommy Gray, Keith Brown, Keith Moreland, Tony Pena, Vaughn Hayes, Nolan Ryan, there we go, big one, Harold Baines, Scott Fletcher, Kirk McCaskill, Andre Scalaraga, the Big Cat, and Eric Plunk. Scalaraga, another one of those cool names. Also as a Giants fan, would go on to play for the Giants later in his career, and it was just a joy to watch for the entirety of his career, pretty much. Let's go. Ruben Sierra, MVP. I'll never forget the day that Ruben Sierra and Jose Canseco were swapped for each other, sitting down to watch a game and realizing Jose Canseco was not running out on the field, and then hearing them announce that he had just been traded for Ruben Sierra. Kind of an odd trade for both teams. Kind of worked out in a way for both teams. Kurt Schilling, solid. Tony Gwynn, John Moses, Jeff Musselman, Mike Jackson, Manny Trio, Dennis Cook, Edgar Martinez, one of my favorites to watch at the plate. John Smoltz. Gotta get that Edgar back out of there too. Van Snyder, Andy Hawkins, Dante Bichette, of course, Bo's dad. That's how you know you're old, is when you watch a guy play really well and then watch his son come up and play even better. So be interesting to see how Bo Bichette pans out over the course of his career. I've got him on my Dynasty League team, so I'm obviously pulling for him to have a fantastic career. Don Carmen, Danny Darwin, Dave Gallagher, Oda B. McDowell, Mike Witt, Nelson Santavina, Ron Hassey, Steve Farr, Jay Bell, Mickey Hatcher, Rick Cerrone, Willie Randolph, Dave Bergman, Wally Beckman, and R.C. Gonzalez. To round that pack out, let's keep this thing going. Still looking again for Gary Sheffield rookie. Wouldn't mind getting another Ken Griffey, Nolan Ryan, Rickey Henderson. Would love to get some of those. But also, as a fan of the sport of baseball and card collecting for a long time, I just thoroughly enjoy going through and seeing these old names like a Willie Wilson, Brooke Jacoby, Mike Marshall, Rich Gedman, Dave Winfield, of course. Great player for a long time. Ted Power, Darryl Strawberry, fun to watch. Played one season with the Giants, and him and Eric Davis. That was an odd combination, but it was a lot of fun to watch them play. Terry Kennedy, Greg Walker, Gerald Perry, Danny Jackson, Burt Blyleven, Kelly Gruber, Henry Cotto, and there's that Gary Sheffield we've been waiting for. So getting two of these rated rookies, Griffey and Sheffield. Pretty excited about the box so far. Oswald Peraza, Bobby Bonilla, Scott Terry, Frank DiPino, Junior Ortiz, Tom Glavine, Jose Rijo, Phil Bradley, Tom Flannery, Lenny Dykstra, Larry Anderson, Felix Jose, another rated rookie that we talked about, and Cal Ripken. Let's go. I know I didn't do this earlier, but we are going to go ahead and pull that Tom Glavine out. Go back and pull the other one out later. You see that name a second time and you think, maybe I'll pull that one out. Hey, let's keep it moving. Eric Hetzel, Wayne Tolleson, Ricky Jordan, Jack Savage, Bob Malachy, Dave Henderson, Lloyd McClendon. There's a card back there. Brian Harper, Rick Leach, Mike Schooler, Alex Sanchez, Norm Charlton, Shane Mack, Chris Spire, and Tom Prince. So again, lots of recognizable names. If you grew up watching baseball in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, a lot of these names are popping, and it's kind of fun to just bring back the nostalgia of watching those guys play. And even though, again, they might not be in the Hall of Fame, some of them had really decent careers. Yvonne Calderon, Rick Russell, one of those guys, Paul O'Neill, Gene Larkin, Dave Steeb, Alvin Davis, Al Nipper, Chris Carpenter, rated rookie. He'd go on to have a really solid career. David Cohn, we'll pull that one. Dan Plesac, Joe Price, Jeff Robinson, Randy Reddy, Ozzie Smith, MVP, and Juan Agusto. I slaughtered that name, Agosto. Let's keep rolling. We've got the puzzle again. Rich Gossage, Mookie Wilson, Dale Sim, Mike Aldretti, RJ Reynolds, Rafael Palmeiro, Dale Murphy, Rob Thompson. As a Giants fan, again, one of my favorites. Barry Bonds, there we go, as a Giants fan as well, and just a fan of baseball in general. One of my favorites, definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. John Kruk, fun guy to watch. Eric Davis, great professional as well. Steve Bedrosian, Mike Scott, Ozzie Smith, Melito Perez. This is a pretty solid pack, actually. I'm going to pull a few more out of these. There's a couple guys in here that are solid that maybe not worth pulling, but yeah, we'll leave that. A lot of veteran Hall of Fame names in that pack, actually. That was a solid individual pack. Hey, let's see. John Dobson, Luis Polonia, Brad Wellman, Carmen Castillo, Danny Heap, Ken Phelps, Todd Benzinger, Salazar, Mike Greenwell, Mickey Tettleton, Steve Bedrosian, Dan Glatton, Tom Henke, Jim Presley. Again, lots of starting to see a lot of the repeat names now that we're halfway through the box. Okay, let's see. Mark Lemke as a shorter guy. Always admired him. Rolando Rooms, Barry Lyons, Darnell Coles, Pat Borders, Steve Lombardozzi, Vince Coleman, Diamond King, Wayne Ward, Randy Bush, Will Clark, MVP. There we go. Giants fans. Will the Thrill, Mark Clear, Wally Joyner, MVP. Wally was a great veteran himself as well. Luis Rivera, Bill Long, Will Frazier. So decent card there as well, or decent pack there as well. Okay, Danny Cox, Dan Petrie, Johnny Ray, Joel Meyer, Larry Sheets, Mike Henneman, Franklin Stubbs, Al Leiter, Julio Franco. Yeah, there we go. I like Julio Franco. Probably not worth pulling that individual card, but I liked the way he hit. I liked his approach late. Ed Hearn, Cecil Espy, Luis Medina, another rated rookie. Would love to go back and look at his overall career. Gino Petralli and Andy Gaffigan. Okay, Greg Maddux. There we go. Kelly Downs, Jim Gott, Paul Ossenmacher, Jeff Treadway, Marvell Wynn, Tom Pagnozzi, Don Carmen, Danny Darwin, Dave Gallagher, Otoby McDowell, Mike Witt, Nelson Santavania, and Ron Hassey. Very familiar name growing up in an A's household. I'm a Giants fan, but I grew up in an A's household. Split household, actually. A's and Giants. So, very familiar name, Ron Hassey. Oh, Wally Joyner. There we go. Ruben Sierra, Steve Cersei, Tim Rock Reigns, Jose Canseco. Okay, there we go. This one over here. Frank White, Alfredo Griffin, Don Mattingly, Wade Boggs. This is the hitters pack right here. Cal Ripken. Let's keep it going. Greg Brock, Corey Snyder. Great first name. Hint, hint. And Denny Walling. That was a great pack for hitters right there. Canseco, Mattingly, Ripken, Boggs. A lot of Hall of Fame stats in there. You know, Canseco's not in the Hall of Fame, and you know, say what you will about how he got his stats, but the dude could straight up smash a baseball, so still gets some credit. Damon Berryhill, Mike Dunn, Pete Smith, Barry Larkin. There we go. Let's see. Another one of my all-time favorites, Roberto Remember the Alomar. I played second base in high school and made some pretty fantastic plays, so people would often nickname me Roberto Alomar. Howard Johnson, Jim DeShays, Greg Harris, Paul Kilgis, Andy Van Slyke, Tim Burke, Terry Steinbach, again, another familiar A's name, Floyd Bannister, and Tom Candiotti. Craig Biggio. Eventually go to second base, another one of the guys because he played second base and was smaller. Huge fan of him. Tim Jones, Darren Dalton, Norm Charlton, Shane Mack, Chris Spire, Tom Prince, Mark Lemke, Rolando Rooms, Barry Lyons, Darnell Coles, Pat Borders, Steve Lombardozzi, and Vince Coleman, as well as Dwayne Ward again. So keeping up with the familiar names, starting to see lots of repeats as we blow through this box right here. This box has been sitting for 35, 36 years, so pretty excited actually to see that most of the cards are still intact. Doesn't seem like any of the packs had any leakage. Bob Welch, Pat Tabler, John Farrell, John Shelby, Rafael Santana, Ellis Burks, another great veteran, Walt Terrell, Paul Molitor, there we go, Dave Winfield MVP card, Tom Foley, Ken Williams, Johnny Ray, Kevin Bass, Jose Akendo, and Milt Thompson. We're getting close here. We're about 90% of the way through, I believe. So let's see. Jay Bell, Steve Farr, Mickey Hatcher, Jeff Sellers. That's the first card that we've seen that's had any real damage to it. Rick Cerrone, Willie Randolph, Dave Bergman, Wally Backman, R.C. Gonzalez, Yvonne Calderon, Rick Rushell, Paul O'Neill, Gene Larkin, and Dave Steeb. Again, lots of veteran names in there, but not necessarily any Hall of Famers or names you want to pull out. Let's see what we got here. Randy Bush, Rick Aguilera, Will Clark, Drew Hall, Andres Thomas, Don Robinson, Caveman, Felix Vermeen, Dennis Rasmussen, Ron Oyster, Greg Harris, Ken Caminiti again, Ken Hill, Ryan Harvey, Blackjack McDowell, and Ray Hayward. Okay, getting down to the last, I think 7 packs left, so we're almost there. Been a good box so far. We got a Griffey, a Sheffield, and some solid veterans that we can come back to. Fernando Valenzuela, Rickey Henderson. There we go. There he is. That's my man. That was my number one growing up. Jack Morris, solid veteran. Dwight Evans, Andre Dawson, the Hawk, Tom Niedenfuhr, Dave Schmidt, Keith Atherton, Jim Clancy, Scott Bradley, Mark Grace, another solid veteran. Will Clark, Mike Lavalier, has one of the coolest names ever. Gerald Perry, and John Franco. Lavalier is a fun name to say. Doesn't necessarily roll off the tongue for some of us, but fun to say. Going to pull out the Will Clark, and we're going to go back through here and pull out the Andre Dawson as well. Set those aside and make something with them. Okay, few packs left. We're getting there. Again, I thank you for joining me on this journey. This is my first video and something I've been looking at doing for a while. Trying to figure out how to reconnect with one of my favorite hobbies, which is card collecting, as well as just sports in general. Ron Robinson, Mike Brumley, Scott Geraltz, Jose Lean, Charlie Pulio, Les Lancaster, Randy Myers, Ray Quinones, Mike Flanagan, Greg Gagne, Fred McGriff, David Wells, Tommy Hare, Kevin Elster, and Kevin Gross. Again, handful of solid veterans in there that played for a while and had great careers, but maybe not Hall of Famers. But yeah, to continue the thought, you can follow me on Whatnot at the same name, Junk Wax Nostalgic, and visit my store, as well as join me for live rips and sales. Alvin Davis, Chris Carpenter, another one, Al Nipper, David Cohn, Dan Plesac, Joe Price, Jeff Robinson, Randy Reddy, Ozzie Smith, Juan Aguso, Danny Cox, Dan Petrie, Bob Brower, Ron Jones, and Bobby Witt. There we go. Another name with a veteran name with a son who is having some success as well. So Bobby Witt himself had a pretty decent career. So let's see. Tom Gordon, rated rookie. Again, solid veteran, fun guy to watch. Johnny Paredes, Todd Burns, Jose DeJesus, Tim Leary, Hensley Bam Bam Mullins, Wes Gardner, Eric King, Juan Castillo, Oswald Perez, Bobby Bonilla again, Checklist, Scott Terry, Frank DePino, and Junior Ortiz. So again, you can join me on Instagram and whatnot under the same name, Junk Wax Nostalgic, and I'll be doing more rips like this, long form videos, Instagram short form stuff, and promoting my sales on Whatnot, and then Whatnot and eBay, doing sales as well. eBay store still working on getting that up, but it'll be up soon. Ed Whitson, Greg Matthews, Lance Parrish, Dave Smith, a couple of cards stuck together. Bobby Thigpen, Cecilio Guante, Brian Downing, Pasquale Perez, Carney Lansford, another familiar name for those Bay Area fans, Greg Swindell, Kevin Seitzer, Jesse Orozco, Roger Clemens, Rich Dotson, and Mike Heath. Of course, we're going to pull the Roger down to the last 2 packs. Rick Honeycutt in here, another name native to Bay Area baseball fans. Calvin Schiraldi, Deion James, Rick Rushell, John Smiley, Sean Abner, Chris Sabo. That is Chris Sabo's rookie card. Fortunately, that career started a lot hotter than it ended. Chris James, Bill Doran, Ken Daly, Jack Howell, Dan Pasqua, Jose Guzman, Carlos Quintana, going to have a solid career as well, Jeff Parrott, and Rick Honeycutt. It's fun to, you go through all these names, and there's so many guys that made a difference that won't get recognized because they aren't in the Hall of Fame. You have in all sports, the piece players, the guys that played for a long time that were impactful to their teams and mattered to their teams, but get forgotten by history. So it's fun to just go back through here. Mike Fitzgerald, Dave Henderson, Doug Jones, Rick Dempsey, Joel Skinner, Bob Stanley, Jim Wallawander, Don August, Andres Big Cat Galarraga, Joe Hexeth, Daryl Boston, Chili Davis, another one of those veterans, John Fishel, and Jose De Leon. So kind of going out with a whimper. But we did get 2 Chris Carpenter rated rookies. We did come across 2 of those. And we came across the Gary Sheffield and Ken Griffey Jr. rated rookies as well. So a win as our first pack. I'll take that. Join me as I open up some more of these in the future, one pack at a time, one box at a time, and I'll see you guys in the future. Thanks for playing along. Bye.